4,500 auto workers fired, not in a decade, but in a single week. And the trigger? Trump's brutal tariff strike. The Trump administration's decision to slam new tariffs on auto imports didn't just target foreign companies. It detonated the U.S. auto industry from the inside out. Factories shut down. Jobs vanished. Entire supply chains collapsed. And the most shocking part? It's only just beginning. If you care about your paycheck, your car, or how politics hijacks the economy, hit that subscribe button. Think of it as staying one step ahead of the fallout. Because today, we break down 5 devastating shocks triggered by Trump's auto tariffs, and number 1 is a geopolitical twist no one saw coming. Number 5, Stellantis shuts down, 4,500 jobs gone overnight. It wasn't Ford. It wasn't GM. It was Stellantis, the 4th largest automaker in the world, that fired the opening shot. Just 72 hours after Trump's renewed tariff policy hit headlines, Stellantis abruptly announced the shutdown of 2 major factories, one in Windsor, Ontario, and the other in Toluca, Mexico. The result? Over 4,500 workers instantly out of a job. No severance plans. No soft landing. Just silence. Why? Stellantis admitted it couldn't afford to maintain operations with 25% tariffs hammering imported components and vehicles. Canadian and Mexican plants, which rely on constant cross-border shipments, became financially unsustainable overnight. This wasn't just a business decision. This was economic shock therapy. In Windsor alone, over 2,300 employees were notified their plant would be idled indefinitely. That's code for "you're not coming back." And here's the kicker. These weren't minimum wage roles. Many of these jobs paid $28 to $45 per hour, including full benefits. Gone. And the blowback didn't stop at the border. The Toluca shutdown rippled into Michigan, where parts suppliers instantly paused operations. Even non-Stellantis workers in the U.S. felt the pain. Within days, Trump's tariff war was supposed to bring jobs back to America. But this was the opposite. But if you think this is just the start of a correction, wait until you see what happened inside Ford next. Number 4. Ford axes U.S. jobs as tariff shockwaves hit home. Ford Motor Company didn't wait for the damage to roll in. It preemptively cut over 4,000 jobs. Quietly, strategically, brutally. According to internal sources and local union reps, Ford initiated layoffs across multiple U.S. facilities, particularly in supply chain and parts distribution centers that relied heavily on components imported from Mexico and Canada. The timing? Days after Trump's 25% auto tariff policy went into effect. Publicly, Ford framed the move as operational restructuring. But behind the scenes, executives blamed one thing: tariff volatility. Let's be clear, Ford isn't a small player testing the waters. This is a $250+ billion company, and if even they can't absorb Trump's trade war, the industry's in deep trouble. A leaked internal report cited a projected $1 billion increase in annual logistics and materials costs if tariffs remain in place. That's before even accounting for consumer fallout. Here's the twist. Ford had already invested over $11 billion in EV production across the U.S., aiming to reshore jobs and align with federal incentives. Now, those plans are frozen. Entire product lines delayed. Hiring paused. And to cover the losses, Ford slashed its own workforce. Not in China, not in Mexico, but in Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky. This wasn't the return of American jobs. This was the great unraveling. But the bigger disaster was still to come, and it hit the American consumer right where it hurts most, the wallet. Number 3, the price explosion, $12,000 more for the same car. Imagine walking into a dealership today and finding out your $35,000 car now costs nearly $47,000. That's the reality tens of thousands of Americans are waking up to, and it's a direct result of Trump's tariff war. Following the implementation of the 25% auto import tariff, vehicle prices across the board surged by $2,500 to $12,000, depending on the model and manufacturing origin. That's not speculation. That's according to Kelley Blue Book and the Center for Automotive Research. And it's not just luxury vehicles. Mid-range sedans, pickup trucks, and even basic family SUVs are getting hit. Why? Because over 45% of parts in a typical U.S. assembled car still come from outside the country, primarily Mexico, Canada, and South Korea. Ford, GM, and even Tesla have quietly adjusted MSRP values, citing supply chain inflation. But consumers know better. They're paying for politics. Here's the ripple effect. Higher car prices mean higher auto loan payments, higher insurance premiums, and lower overall sales. Dealerships are sitting on record inventory, and buyers are walking away. In Q1 alone, U.S. auto sales dropped by 6.9%, the steepest decline in 15 years. And guess who's watching all this unfold with concern? China and the EU, both preparing counter tariffs that could make this price shock look tame. But the true strategic twist is what Ford did next, a desperate move to survive that exposed how fragile the industry has become. Number 2, Ford's desperate employee pricing Gambit backfires. When automakers start giving away discounts like candy, you know they're bleeding. And Ford's latest move proves it. In a shocking turn, Ford launched a nationwide employee pricing for everyone campaign, a program usually reserved for Black Friday, and made it permanent in dozens of states. Translation: they're slashing prices by up to $7,000 just to move metal. Why? Because Trump's tariff shock has jammed up the supply chain, spiked production costs, and collapsed buyer demand. Instead of raising prices and scaring off more customers, Ford gambled on volume, hoping discounts could mask the chaos. But it's not working. Here's the kicker. Internal data shows that even with employee pricing, Ford's F-150 sales dropped 8.2% in March compared to the previous year. That's their best-selling vehicle, and it's tanking. Dealers are now offering zero-interest financing, loyalty bonuses, and inventory buybacks just to avoid drowning in unsold units. In some southern states, Ford trucks are piling up at 3 times the normal inventory turnover rate. And yet none of this addresses the core problem. Tariffs have poisoned the business model. You can't discount your way out of a structural supply chain collapse. What makes it worse? Sources reveal Ford is slashing ad budgets, freezing development on 2 new EV models, and delaying planned factory expansions in Tennessee and Georgia. And just when you think Ford hit bottom, the final twist comes from Washington, where Trump's so-called fix triggered an even bigger disaster. Chinese EV makers move in, while U.S. auto stalls. As Ford bleeds and GM freezes production, Chinese EV giants are quietly taking over the American market. In Q1, BYD and Geely reported a 34% increase in U.S. vehicle registrations, with thousands of their EVs now appearing in states like California, Texas, and New York. Why? Because Trump's tariffs don't apply to final assembled EVs routed through Mexico, thanks to NAFTA loopholes. Meanwhile, U.S. automakers can't even keep basic parts on the shelves. Chinese brands are offering fully electric sedans for under $25,000, while Ford's entry-level EVs are delayed and overpriced. Consumers are switching, not out of loyalty, but out of pure necessity. And it gets worse. Chinese firms are signing supply chain deals with U.S. charging networks, locking in long-term infrastructure advantages. So, while Washington screams America first, Beijing is executing America next. If this isn't a full-scale economic inversion, what is? Number 1. Trump's fix unleashes the ultimate blow, a supply chain collapse. In a last-minute move to calm markets, Trump's administration announced a partial rollback, temporary exemption for select auto parts. The intent? Give U.S. automakers some breathing room. But instead of relief, it triggered chaos. Here's the problem. The exemptions only applied to a narrow list of components and required case-by-case applications, delays, and red tape. For manufacturers like Ford, GM, and Stellantis, the fix was worse than the tariff. Over 60% of U.S. assembly lines rely on just-in-time logistics, meaning even a 48-hour delay on one part can halt production entirely. That's exactly what happened. Within 2 weeks of the announcement, Dozens of U.S. plants began reporting parts shortages, especially for critical components like transmissions, semiconductors, and drivetrain modules. Ford's Chicago plant shut down for 3 days. GM idled shifts in Indiana and Missouri. Stellantis rerouted cargo at a cost of $2.3 million per week in expedited freight. And here's the geopolitical twist. While U.S. factories stall, China and Mexico seize the moment, offering incentives to lure canceled U.S. orders. American parts suppliers started offshoring again just to survive. In short, the fix backfired, escalating the collapse of a once self-reliant industry into a full-blown logistics implosion. Trump promised protectionism would bring jobs back. Instead, it sent them packing faster than ever. But what does this mean long-term? Let's break it down. Final thoughts. Trump's auto tariffs were sold as a bold strategy to protect American industry. But in practice, they've triggered mass layoffs, price shocks, plant shutdowns, and supply chain collapses, not in China, not in Mexico, but right here at home. Ford's desperate cuts, Stellantis closures, and skyrocketing car prices all point to one brutal truth. You can't isolate a global industry without consequences. And as the U.S. loses manufacturing stability, foreign competitors are quietly taking market share America may never win back. The future? Expect deeper job cuts, more expensive vehicles, and a race to the bottom as companies scramble to survive tariff whiplash. If this kind of economic blowback matters to you, drop your take in the comments. Is Trump's trade war helping or hurting? And hey, if you want real talk on global strategy, not political spin, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started.